The following program is a production of The Bob and John Show. Any similarity between person and places is strictly a coincidence. The producers of this program are solely responsible for its content.
It's now time for the Sudsy Wudsy Show, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy, it's an all-purpose cleaner. It's a car wash. It's a bubble bath. It's a soft scrub for those hands in the garden. Yes, it's Sudsy Wudsy. Sudsy Wudsy now proudly presents The Adventures of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator. Ear, eyes, and nose. The complete package. Jimmy Ballpoint.
This is where I work. The city. It used to be a nice place with nice people. But like everything else, they left. And now the city is a dark and gritty city with dark and gritty sidewalks, with dark and gritty taxis. Downright depressing if it wasn't for the gum stuck under the tables at the automat. I'm Jimmy Ballpoint, private investigator. Ear, eye, and nose, the complete package. My office is up 3 flights of stairs, straight up, right above a flop house. A little office with a desk, chair, sink, and a couch. Like I said, a dark and gritty place. But it's just right for a guy like me.
The case that I'm working on now is the case of the Delusional Super 8. Nothing beats a good cup of joe in the morning and a bagel with cream cheese. The chow here at Carney's Diner is pretty good too. Let's see. What's the special for tonight? Carney is going with leftovers. Stewed beef, stewed pork, stewed chicken a la something. Oh, this ought to be interesting. Stuffed peppers. It never fails. Stuffed peppers is stuffed with yesterday's stewed beef, stewed pork, and that chicken a la something. The conversation in the booth draws my attention. Something about the Pinky-Doo family. Interesting. The Pinky-Doo mugs are in the who's who, the upper crust around here. They're old money and lots of it. With them, it's not how much, but how long you've had it. The last of the bright lights and the social crowd. I'll have to stop at Blink's newsstand and get the early edition. I finished my joe and bagel, left a sawbuck, and headed out to Blink's newsstand. I made some small talk with Blinks, trying to avoid eye contact. Paid for the morning edition and headed back to my office. I usually don't stop at Blink's. He's got this facial tic that drives me nuts. After a few minutes talking with the mug, I start clicking away on my right cheek, and it takes me all morning to get rid of the darn thing. I get to my office building and head up 3 flights of stairs, straight up. Vernon's office door is open, or should I say off its hinges. Vernon is in the private investigator business too. Just a different racket, that's all. He deals in divorces in process. Seems like the Last case he had involved a really big mug who had issues with doors. I made it to my office, went in, and tossed my hat and coat at the coat rack. I missed, of course. I settled back in my swivel chair and opened the paper. Let's see. The story on the Pinky Do. Now, where would that story be? Oh, yeah, the social section. Like the city has a social section. It never ceases to amaze me how... Ballpoint, you're just wasting your breath. Well, what do you know? The Pinky Do family are now part of the rest of us. It seems that one of their fancy cars are missing. It says here, at 10 a.m., Chester Pinky Do noticed his Delusional Super 8 was missing. Who'd be stupid enough to swipe a set of wheels like that? It's not like a mug could find and hide that under a sofa or something. I'll bet that old thing cost Chester Pinky Do back a few skins. I was about to look for the sporting section. I had some dough on Crank Collins, the southpaw, pitching for the Toledo Cellar Scrubs. I know the mug has lost 5 in a row, but I figure he's got a win coming to him. Here it is. Let's see. Crank Collins took the mound and started for Toledo. He gave up 4 hits in the first, 7 hits in the second, and 11 hits in the third. Oh, and was hit by a wild pitch in the 4th inning. The club's manager was quoted by saying that Collins just had an off game, but the managers will come off in 24 hours and he should be back on the mound for Saturday's game. I heard the floorboards creaking outside my office door, and a figure was on my office door's frosted glass, told me I was having company. The door opened slightly, and a portly mug with a cashmere overcoat hanging off his shoulders, a wide Panama hat shaded his eyes from the staircase overhead light, and the smell of cologne was strong enough to outclass a stink bug that filled my office. He took out a monogram handkerchief that was tucked into the left sleeve, wiped the doorknob, and pushed my office door open all the way. His figure was impressive, I'll give him that. His spats, the sharp creases in his white seersucker trousers, and his Caribbean shirt was unique, to say the least. But then, a mug dressed like that is unique, especially to himself, and that's all that matters. He walked over to my desk, wiped off the chair next to my desk, and sat. His name was Chester Pinky Do. He was about to speak when I said, "You're missing something important, I see." His glare at me told me this mug wasn't used to being talked to like that. Like I cared. The slug was in my world now, so he'd better get used to it. Chester wiped the side of his mouth, then told me that my services were recommended by a friend of his. I thought to myself, the Pinky Doos of this world don't have friends. They buy things. People are just on the shopping list. I listened for about an hour how his suspicions centered around one person, whose envy and want for what he had was perpetual, even at a young age. I found that statement to be unusual, so I asked, "At a young age? How young?" He said, since they were very young. Then he mentioned the name, Illumina, his sister. Alumina? You mean like a light bulb? Again with the stare of contempt, I leaned forward towards the mug and told him that if he stared at me like that one more time, I was gonna fold him up along with that fancy monogram handkerchief and stuff both of them right back into that bottle of cologne that he poured out all over himself. My remarks caught him off guard. He leaned back in his chair and gave me a nod that he understood. He stood up, reached into his coat, and pulled out a billfold. A couple of bills laid on my desk along with, "Find it." He turned and left. I reached for the bills and my jaw dropped. I was holding $2,000. I'd better get hopping on this one. I reached for the phone and tapped the cradle. The switchboard clicked a few times, and then the operator came on. It was Kelly. Kelly and I go a way back. We were a number once, but then that's another story. "Hello there, beautiful." Kelly said she was just thinking about me and that dinner I promised. "Oh yeah, about that." Kelly interrupted and told me don't hurt myself thinking about it. I asked her if she had the number for the Delusional car dealership. Kelly came back with, "Well, some mug is moving up in the world." "Nah, it's part of a case I'm working on. About the dealership." Kelly found the dealership in the Crystal section of the city. Class all the way in that part. I was about to hang up when Kelly told me to watch my back going in there. She said, "What I see is not reality for our kind." I left the office and headed downstairs to the street. I got to the taxi stand next to Angel's Bar and sat on the bench facing the street. It didn't take long for a cab to pull up, and I got up and opened the back door when I froze. It was Pencil Lip Skip behind the wheel. Everyone called him Pencil Lip because he had this thin pencil mustache on his lip. He also had this toothpick that he rolled back and forth across his street. The guy gave me the creeps. I told Pencil Lip to take me to the Delusional dealership in the Crystal section. He looked back at me doing a double take. The ride was quiet as Pencil Lip glanced back and forth behind the wheel. I had the impression that the mug was trying to figure out something. I don't know, maybe it was just me. I was dropped off in front of the dealership. I flipped Pencil Lip a sawbuck, turned and walked towards the shiny glass doors. A carpet greeted me, and fancy music surrounded the inside of the showroom. A classy-looking stiff in a tux greeted me with a tall stem glass of bubbly, while another classy-looking stiff gave me a complimentary boutonniere in the lapel of my sport coat. The stiff with the boutonniere asked if he could show me a model that I might be interested in. He pointed to several in the showroom. I gave the man my card and told him that I wanted to ask some questions about the Delusional Super 8, a case I was working on. The music in the showroom stopped. The long-stem champagne glass was gone, along with the bubbly, and the boutonniere in my lapel was gone. The light from an open door down a hallway leading to the back of the building was suggested as I was about to get the bum's rush when I mentioned Chester Pinky-Doo was a client, and I was there on business representing him. The music in the showroom came back on. The long-stem champagne glass was back, as was the bubbly, and the boutonniere was back in my lapel of my sport coat. Well now, that's more like it. You know, a mug could really get used to this. I looked around and wanted to know more about the kind of upper crust that would want one of these things. I asked the stip in the tux to show me around. The first model was for the younger set, those fraternity Ivy League types. We walked over to a low, sleek, red convertible called the Rah-Rah Automatic. A two-seater with a pom-pom holder, a mini cedar closet for a raccoon coat, and a champagne bucket in the trunk. We then moved on to the flagship of the company, the Delusional Super 8. A long, four-door beauty with an interior that would put City Hall to shame, along with an 8-cylinder engine that shared the same wants and needs of its owner. Power. The interior was carefully designed and appointed with the finest materials of the time. A quiet solitude that surrounded the owner with the indulgence of the work by others. A superior place of places, just mere inches away from the world the rest of us deal with. Why would the sister of Chester Pinky-Doo want this when she could have any custom-made car she wanted? Now that didn't add up. I asked the mug in the tux if there was a ladies' model, you know, something for the powder puff crowd. He looked at me and said with confidence, "Ladies are chauffeured in the Delusional Super 8. This model is too large and powerful for the ladies." I stood there for a moment, waiting for a smile, you know, a joke. The tux stiff was serious as a right hook from a heavyweight champ. Just then a few dolls came to mind that would take old Tuxie here and stuff him in the cedar closet of the Rah-Rah Automatic and park him and that set of wheels on the 50-yard line of the municipal stadium. I headed to the front door of the showroom, leaving the stemware, less its contents, and the boutonniere on a marble table. I turned to the showroom folks, made a fist and tapped my chest lightly, letting out a bit of attitude. I turned and said, "I've had better." I was expecting to walk back to my office when I noticed Pencil Lip sitting in his cab across the street. I got in and Pencil Lip smiled in his mirror and pulled away from the curb. We arrived at the front of my building. I gave Pencil Lip a sawbuck and headed upstairs to my office. As I made it up the staircase, Vernon came out of his office and looked worried. He hesitated for a moment, then held up his hands and suggested that I stay out of my office for a while. What? He said some lady was there, most upset, and was accompanied by men carrying things. A lot of things. They went up and down the staircase all morning. My curiosity was piqued, so I continued up to my office. I got to the top landing and reached for the doorknob. The doorknob had something that was blocking the door. I forced the door open, and there, wall to wall, almost to the ceiling, was a car, a really fancy model at that. One of the headlights rolled out of the door and almost down the staircase when I caught it with my foot. I looked around my office and there was a hood, doors, windshield, and everything and anything for a Delusional Super 8. I mean everything. Right down to the champagne buckets. An envelope was stuck to the back of my office door with $2,000 in it. A note with the $2,000 that gave me instructions to contact Pinky Doo and tell him that his Delusional Super 8 is being returned. The note was signed by his sister, Illumina. There was a P.S. Don't tell me what I can and cannot do. Wow. This dame took a deluxe Delusional Super 8 apart, piece by piece, then had it hauled up here 3 flights of stairs and parked it in my office. I couldn't help to think to myself, this is one crazy dame to mess with. I called Chester Pinky Doo and broke the news to the mug. Without hesitating, he said, "Keep it." What? I thought for a moment, then gave Kelly on the switchboard a call. I asked her to connect me to the Delusional dealer. A couple of clicks later, and I offered them a deal. A Delusional Super 8, free for the taking. Without hesitation, they'd send someone right over. I paused and explained the situation along with the mug better bring some tools and a big truck. I hung up and remembered that promise I made to Kelly. That note on the inside of my office door was still fresh in my mind, along with a few choice words. Hello, Kelly. What you doing for dinner tonight? After all, a deal is a deal. I hung up and walked around all the car parts in my office. I removed the tape from the envelope stuck on the frosted glass. I thought of Kelly and reminded myself, it wouldn't be a smart thing to upset that gal.
Well, folks, that concludes another episode of Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator, brought to you by Sudsy Wudsy, that all-purpose cleaner. Keep your radio dial on this station for next week's Jimmy Ballpoint, Private Investigator. Ear, eye, nose, the complete package.